committed under the special circumstance that the defendant intentionally
Espinoza showed no remorse after the judge's ruling, which included a concurrent 25 years to life sentence. Number 14. Abel Gallegos. Abel Gallegos, along with Alonzo Quintana and Rene Francisco Rosales, has been sentenced to life in prison without parole plus 163 years for his role in kidnapping and slaying Simone Duran. Duran was identified in an attempting slaying investigation in Adams County in 2018. Gallegos, Quintana, and Rosales were found guilty of multiple counts for the retaliation slaying. Duran was lured, kidnapped, shot 10 times, and set on fire. Gallegos has been revoked on parole or probation 8 times. Number 13. Anthony Carpio. The family of Anthony Carpio, who was knifed to demise while playing handball at Resida's Cleveland High School in 2013, has unsuccessfully tried to bar him from being resentenced as a juvenile. Anthony and his brother, Michael Steve Carpio, were convicted of second-degree slaying in the demise of Kevin Orellana in 2015. Anthony, who was 16 years old at the time, was sentenced to 16 years to life in prison, while his older brother Michael was sentenced to 15 years to life. Under Proposition 57, prosecutors must seek court approval to try minors as adults. Anthony's family filed a writ of habeas corpus, arguing that he should have been convicted as a juvenile offender. Number 12. Shakur Wright. Shakur Wright, a 23-year-old gang member, has been sentenced to 3 separate crimes in Fulton County, Georgia. Wright pleaded guilty to 2 slayings and an armed robbery in 2016, each involving a gang member. One of the most horrific demises in recent Atlanta history occurred in April 2016, when Wright and his high school friend Derek Boston confronted a 23-year-old man who was struck in the face and robbed. Wright then fired several shots, grazing the victim's head. The other tragic demise occurred in October 2016, when Christopher Dean, a father of 2, was tortured during his last moments of life. Wright was responsible for the physical torture of Dean, and 5 of Wright's co-defendants were convicted of slaying and sentenced to life in prison. The slayings represent the most horrific demise in Atlanta County's history. Number 11. Raymond Wood. An alleged MS-13 gang member convicted of the slaying of a Lynchburg teen will spend 55 years in prison. Raymond Wood, 17, was found with 29 knife wounds in Bedford County in 2017. In October, a jury found Victor Rodas guilty of slaying him. The jury recommended Rodas spend 35 years in prison for first-degree slaying, 10 years in prison for abduction, and 10 years in prison for gang participation. Number 10. Christopher Lockett. Christopher Dean, a 33-year-old father of 2, was brutally beaten, sodomized, and shot twice in the back of the head in Atlanta. He was allegedly slayed by members of the Gangster Disciples to make an example of him and show other gang members that working as a police witness would not be tolerated. The slaying was committed by Christopher Lockett, who had learned about Dean's past as a police witness in California. prosecutors allege that Joshua Rooks, Jasper Green, and Lamar Allman were involved in the crime. All 7 defendants were later connected to the crime and arrested. A jury convicted Lockett, Gibson, Quatez Clark, Rooks, and Green for slaying, felony slaying, participation in criminal street gang activity, and other related felonies. Allman and Orlando Gibson will be tried before a Fulton County Superior Court jury at a later time. Number 9. Tariq Jackson. Tariq Jackson, 18, was sentenced to 17 to 40 years in prison for second-degree slaying, felony firearm, and numerous perjury charges in the 2015 slaying demise of 20-year-old Keandre Duff. Jackson was previously charged in the suspected gang-related slaying of 17-year-old Keon Washington in 2014 and his own demise. At the sentencing, Jackson apologized to Duff's family and expressed her forgiveness for her deceased son. Duff's mother, Marquita Claybron, expressed her desire for the young men involved to make a difference in their lives.
My bad choice led to a lose-lose situation for me, my family, and the family of the victim.
Our whole world was turned upside down from that point.
I won't be able to hug mine for a while, and my mom won't be able to hug me for a while, so it's a sad situation.
Number 8. Sean Denzel Garrett. A federal court sentence was handed down to 3 men from Roanoke who were part of the Rollin 30s Crips, a criminal street gang that was accountable for 2 slayings in the city. In November 2021, Sean Denzel Garrett, 31, also known as Harlem Dank, entered a guilty plea to 1 count of conspiracy to commit racketeering and 1 count of conspiracy to commit slaying. In addition to 1 count of conspiracy to kill a different victim, these 2 counts contained responsibility for a slaying. His sentence of 37 years in jail was handed down. Number 7. Nico Allen Jenkins. Nico Allen Jenkins is an American spree slayer convicted of committing 4 slayings in Omaha, Nebraska in August 2013. Jenkins insisted during the trial that Apophis is in charge of him. He would laugh, howl, and talk in tongues during the prosecutor's account of his victims' demises in court.
That the 4-time killer has shown no remorse. In fact, Nico Jenkins testified at his own competency hearing.
He's had a lot to say in court throughout the last 4 years, but today he was noticeably quiet.
Judge Peter Batalon found Nico Jenkins guilty of all 4 slayings on April 16, 2014. Number 6. Frederick Bayer. A plea agreement has spared Fred Bayer's life and his victims' loved ones from the painful process of pursuing another demise sentence. Bayer, who slayed his mother and daughter 15 years ago, is serving 180 years in prison for physical attacks and home invasions in Marion and Hamilton counties. The agreement was approved by the victim's family, who cried and hugged in the hallway. Bayer will live in state prison, and his victims will never see him again. Number 5. Billy Wayne Coble. A 70-year-old man, Billy Wayne Coble, was executed in Texas after the U.S. Supreme Court denied a petition for a reprieve on grounds of inadequate defense at his trial. Coble was convicted in 1990 of slaying his estranged wife's parents and brother in 1989. He ambushed the victims and shot them at their home in Axtell, Texas. Coble then kidnapped his estranged wife and drove off with her. He was chased by police and knifed her with a knife while driving. He crashed into a parked car and was arrested. His wife survived.
The execution date for a Central Texas man who killed 3 members of his estranged wife's family 29 years ago was finally read in court today.
The longer you live, the easier it is to accept death. Who is not going to leave this world?
Faces execution for killing his estranged wife's parents and her brother, who was a Waco police officer.
Coble's lawyer petitioned the Supreme Court for a stay of execution, arguing that his trial attorneys had deprived him of his constitutional right to a fair trial by putting on a shoddy defense. Number 4. Scott Raymond Dozier. In 2002, Scott Raymond Dozier, an American slayer, slayed Jeremiah Miller, a 22-year-old drug associate, and placed him on an ending row in Nevada. Dozier had tried to expedite his execution by dropping his appeals, stating to the court and other media outlets that he would sooner die than serve a life sentence in jail. His previous attempt at self-hurt, however, cast doubt on his mental health and ability to waive appeals. Number 3. Brett Hartman. Brett Hartman, the 49th inmate executed in Ohio since 1999, was executed in 1997. He admitted to having an affair with Wanda Snipes and panicked after finding her mutilated body. However, he denied slaying her, a claim rejected by courts. Hartman's attorneys argued that crucial evidence from the crime scene and Snipes' body has never been tested, raising questions about his innocence. Hartman's lawyers argued that his behavior in prison was exemplary and he was a changed man, but the state opposed these arguments, citing the strength of the evidence and the fact the courts have repeatedly upheld Hartman's conviction and ending sentence. "I'm good, let's roll," Brett Hartman said in his final words.
Whether people want to believe I'm innocent or not, but ask why. Why are they hiding? Why are they lying so much?
Has executed a condemned man who killed an Akron woman back in 1997.
No other time in Ohio's history has a prosecutor's office asked the BCI to do testing, and the BCI mysteriously failed to do it on critical pieces of evidence.
Number 2, Joseph Mitchell. Parsons requested to walk under the stars, play basketball, and watch science fiction films before his execution. Prison officials granted his requests, but only allowed him to shoot hoops in a fenced recreation area. Parsons was allowed to walk outdoors at night and watch The Mummy before his execution. He was allowed to call his mother and sister. Parsons became the first inmate to be executed in a new chamber at Utah State Prison. 2 people, whose identities were withheld, administered individual injections, with only one being lethal. A mild sedative was administered before the drugs were administered. Parsons was executed by lethal injection on October 15, 1999. Number 1, Dustin Higgs. Higgs, a man who had tested positive for COVID-19 and was executed during a lame duck period, faced controversy due to concerns about lung damage and a sensation of drowning. The execution was postponed, but the Supreme Court voted 6-3 to proceed. Higgs was executed by lethal injection at the United States Penitentiary in Terre Haute, Indiana, on January 16, 2021. He was the 13th and final person executed by the U.S. federal government during Trump's presidency. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.